The voice that shouldn't exist, Emily. Carter had spent 12 years proving that every voice told the truth. Not the words. People lied every day. But the voice itself never did. Every breath, every hesitation, every tiny vibration hidden inside human speech created a pattern as unique as a fingerprint. Criminals could disguise accents. They could whisper. They could shout. They could even use sophisticated software to imitate someone else. Yet somewhere beneath the deception, the real voice always remained. That was Emily's job. To find it. At 36 years old, she was one of the most respected forensic audio analysts in Chicago. Detectives called her when kidnappers demanded ransom. Federal agents requested her help when anonymous recordings threatened public officials. Prosecutors trusted her testimony because, unlike eyewitnesses, audio didn't forget. Evidence was either authentic, or it wasn't. There was no middle ground. That certainty had shaped her entire life. It was the reason she never believed in ghosts, never believed in miracles, and never believed the dead could speak. Until the night they did. Outside, rain battered the windows of her 8th-floor apartment. Lightning flashed beyond the skyline, briefly illuminating rows of empty office buildings before darkness swallowed them again. The digital clock on her microwave changed from 2:16 to 2:17. At that exact second, her phone vibrated. Once. No ringtone. No caller ID. Just a voicemail notification. Emily barely looked at it. Spam calls had become common over the past year, and anonymous voicemails were usually nothing more than robocalls or accidental recordings. She reached for the phone with little interest, already planning to delete the message without listening. Then she noticed something strange. There was no phone number, no unknown caller, no private line. The space where a number should have appeared was simply blank. She frowned. In 12 years of examining digital communications, she had never seen that before. Curiosity replaced annoyance. She tapped the message. Duration, 43 seconds. She pressed play. For the first 3 seconds, there was only static, not electronic interference. Wind, real wind. Then came slow breathing. A woman. Older. Calm. Emily leaned closer to the speaker. The woman inhaled softly and spoke one word. Emily. Everything stopped. Her heartbeat. Her breathing. Even the storm outside seemed to disappear. The phone slipped from her fingers and struck the hardwood floor with a sharp crack. She didn't move. She couldn't. Because she knew that voice. She hadn't heard it in 17 years. But memory doesn't forget a mother's voice, especially when it's the last one you ever hear. With trembling hands, Emily picked up the phone and pressed play again. Static, breathing, then the voice. Emily. Tears welled in her eyes before she even realized she was crying. No, she whispered. No. The recording continued. Don't trust the accident. A loud metallic clang echoed somewhere in the background. Footsteps, slow, measured, as if someone was walking across a concrete floor. Then silence. For several long seconds, nothing. Finally, the woman spoke again. They're still watching us. The message ended. Emily stared at the screen. Her pulse hammered against her neck. Her mother had died 17 years ago. She had identified the body herself. She had stood beside the grave. She had watched the coffin disappear beneath the earth. Dead people did not leave voicemail messages. She opened the message details. Her breathing became shallow. Received. 2:16 a.m. Recorded. Yesterday. No, she rushed to her laptop. Within seconds, professional forensic software filled the screen. She imported the audio. Waveforms stretched across the monitor. Everything appeared normal. Too normal. The compression format was modern. The metadata was intact. Nothing suggested the file had been copied from an old cassette tape or recovered from outdated storage. Every indicator pointed to the same conclusion. The recording had genuinely been created less than 24 hours earlier. Emily replayed the waveform at half speed. Every breath, every pause, every syllable. Matched memories buried deep inside her mind. The slight rasp after long sentences. The tiny whistle when pronouncing the letter S. The habit of pausing before saying Emily's name. Details too personal for any impersonator to imitate. She closed her eyes. This couldn't be real. It couldn't. Yet every piece of evidence insisted otherwise. Then she heard something she had missed before. Very faint. Hidden beneath the woman's voice. Click. 3 seconds later. Click. Again. Perfectly spaced. Mechanical. Rhythmic. Emily isolated the background frequency, amplified it. The clicking became clearer. She listened several more times. Recognition arrived like ice running through her veins. It sounded exactly like an old 35mm film projector. The same projector her mother used every summer inside the family cabin by Blackwater Lake. A cabin that had burned to the ground the same night her mother supposedly died. Emily slowly leaned back in her chair. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, she wasn't questioning the recording. She was questioning everything she believed about the night her mother died. The funeral everyone remembered, Emily didn't sleep. She replayed the voicemail 37 times before sunrise, not because she expected the message to change, because she hoped it wouldn't. Every playback confirmed the same impossible conclusion. The voice was authentic. By 6:30 in the morning, empty coffee cups covered her kitchen counter. Her laptop displayed dozens of spectral analyses, frequency charts, and waveform comparisons. She had run every forensic test available. Voice print comparison, pitch contour analysis, breathing cadence, formant mapping, background noise separation. Every result pointed in exactly the same direction. A 99.87% probability that the speaker was Elizabeth Carter, her mother, the woman who had died 17 years earlier. Emily stared at the final report. No, she whispered again. There has to be another explanation. Artificial intelligence? Oh, current voice cloning software still left microscopic imperfections. Tiny digital distortions always appeared inside consonants and breathing transitions. This recording contained none. An impersonator? Impossible. No stranger could reproduce habits so subtle they existed below conscious memory. Someone using old recordings? Also impossible. The sentence itself had never existed before. Don't trust the accident. Emily had never heard those words. Neither had anyone else, which meant whoever spoke them had done so yesterday. Or someone wanted her to believe they had. Neither possibility made sense. She closed the laptop. There was only one place left to begin. The accident. By 9 o'clock, she stood outside the Cook County Hall of Records. The limestone building looked exactly as she remembered from years earlier. Cold, gray, indifferent. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed softly above endless rows of filing cabinets and digital archive terminals. A young records clerk greeted her politely. "Can I help you?" Emily placed her department identification on the counter. "I need the complete investigation file for highway collision case 09-417. The clerk typed quickly. His expression remained neutral for several seconds. Then something changed. He frowned. Typed again. Looked back at the screen. "I'm sorry. What is it?" "The physical file isn't here." Emily blinked. "What do you mean it isn't here?" "It shows transferred." "Transferred where?" He clicked another menu. "I don't know. There has to be a destination. There usually is. But..." He turned the monitor slightly toward her. The destination field was empty. Authorization field. Empty. Transfer date. Empty. It simply read, "File removed." Emily had worked with police evidence long enough to understand how impossible that was. Evidence never disappeared. Every movement required signatures. Every signature created records. Someone had deliberately erased the trail. Can I at least access the digital copy? The clerk hesitated. I can try. Several moments passed. Then he slowly shook his head. It's gone too. Gone? I've honestly never seen this before. Emily felt something tighten inside her chest. Two impossible events. One night. First the voicemail. Now this. Coincidence suddenly felt like the least likely explanation. She thanked the clerk and turned toward the exit. Halfway down the hallway, an elderly janitor pushed a mop bucket across the polished floor. As Emily walked past, he spoke without looking up. You're looking for the Carter file. Emily stopped instantly. I didn't tell anyone my name. The old man smiled faintly. You didn't have to. She studied him carefully. Late 70s. Gray beard, maintenance uniform faded by decades of use. Nothing unusual. Yet something about the certainty in his voice unsettled her. You know who I am? I know who your mother was. Emily's heartbeat quickened. How? The janitor rested both hands on the mop handle. I've worked in this building 31 years. I remember everyone who comes here looking for answers. Emily stepped closer. What do you know about the file? The old man's smile disappeared. It wasn't the first time someone removed it. Emily froze. What do you mean? The first person came 17 years ago. She swallowed. And the second? Last Tuesday. The hallway suddenly felt much quieter. Who was it? I don't know. A man? I couldn't tell. A woman? They kept their face covered. Emily stared at him. What did they want? The same thing you want. The Carter file. He lowered his voice, and they were very disappointed when they discovered someone had already taken it. Emily felt a chill spread across her arms. Someone else had reopened her mother's case, only a week earlier, before the voicemail ever arrived, which meant this had started long before she received the message. She reached into her pocket. Did you see anything else? The janitor nodded slowly. I remember one thing. What? They weren't alone. Emily waited. The old man looked toward the rain outside before answering. There was a black sedan parked across the street. They got inside. It never started. It just... He paused. Sat there, watching the building. The photograph nobody ever questioned. Emily left the Hall of Records just after 10. The rain had finally stopped, but the streets still shimmered beneath a gray morning sky. She couldn't stop thinking about what the janitor had said. Someone else had searched for her mother's file, only a week ago, and whoever they were, they had arrived too late. The evidence had already disappeared. That wasn't coincidence. Someone had removed the file before anyone could reopen the investigation. The question was, why now? 17 years had passed. Why erase evidence after nearly 2 decades? As she reached her car, instinct made her stop. She looked across the street. A black sedan sat between 2 delivery vans. Engine off. Dark tinted windows. No license plate on the front. It could have belonged to anyone. Or no one. She stared for several seconds. Nothing happened. No movement. No driver. Finally, she climbed into her car and drove away. When she checked the rearview mirror 5 minutes later, the black sedan was still behind her. Not close, never aggressive, always 3 or 4 cars back. Professional. Emily deliberately changed her route. Instead of driving home, she exited onto a side street. The sedan followed. She made another unexpected turn. Again, it followed. Her heartbeat quickened. A third turn. The sedan disappeared. Had she imagined it? Or had they realized she knew they were there? She wasn't willing to find out. Instead of returning to her apartment, she headed somewhere she hadn't visited in almost 18 years. Her childhood home. The little white house looked smaller than she remembered. The maple tree her father planted was now twice the height of the roof. The porch had been repainted. New owners. New mailbox. New memories. Emily parked across the street but didn't get out immediately. This place no longer belonged to her. Everything inside had changed. Except one thing. The attic. When the house had been sold after her mother's death, The buyers never wanted the old storage boxes left in the attic. Emily had taken most of them. Most. Not all. She walked to the front door. A middle-aged woman answered with a cautious smile. "Can I help you?" Emily introduced herself. "I grew up here." The woman's expression softened immediately. "Oh, you must be Elizabeth's daughter." Emily nodded. "You knew my mother? We bought the house from your family. My husband always said we should meet you someday." Emily hesitated before asking, "Is the attic still the same?" The woman laughed softly. "No one's touched it in years. It's full of old insulation and boxes. If you're looking for something, I don't mind." 20 minutes later, Emily climbed the narrow wooden staircase. Dust floated through thin beams of sunlight. Nothing had changed. Same old beams, same smell of cedar, same creaking floorboards. It felt as though time had simply stopped. Near the back wall sat 3 forgotten cardboard boxes. One still had her mother's handwriting. Summer Photos Blackwater. Emily knelt beside it. Inside were hundreds of photographs, family vacations, birthday parties, fishing trips, Christmas mornings. Normal memories. She slowly flipped through them. Then one photograph caught her attention. Blackwater Lake. Summer of 2008. Less than a year before the accident. Her mother stood beside the old cabin, smiling at the camera. Emily stood next to her, holding a fishing rod. She remembered the day perfectly. Or at least, she thought she did. Something in the background made her stop. Far behind them, at the edge of the trees, someone stood watching, almost hidden by shadows. Too far away to identify. A man, maybe, wearing a dark coat. His face impossible to see. Emily frowned. She had looked at this photograph dozens of times after her mother's funeral. How had she never noticed him? She scanned the image at high resolution using her phone, then enlarged the background. The figure remained blurry, but one detail became clear. The person wasn't looking at the lake. They weren't looking at the cabin. They were looking directly at her mother. Emily searched the rest of the box. More lake photographs, more family pictures. Then another image. Same location. Different day. Again. The same figure, standing farther away, watching. Another photograph. Again. Different clothes. Same posture. Always watching. Not once looking toward the camera. Always watching Elizabeth Carter. Emily spread every photograph across the attic floor. There were 27 pictures taken over 3 summers. The mysterious figure appeared in 9 of them. 9. How had nobody ever seen this? Or had someone seen it and chosen to stay silent? Emily turned over the final photograph. Something was written on the back in her mother's handwriting. Only 4 words. If anything happens. The sentence stopped there. No signature, no date, no explanation. As Emily stared at the unfinished message, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. This time, there was no voicemail, only a text. One sentence. "You should have left the photographs where they were." Emily's blood ran cold. She slowly looked toward the attic window. Across the street, parked beneath the maple tree. The same black sedan had returned, and someone inside was watching her. The man in the black sedan. Emily's first instinct was to call the police. Her second instinct stopped her. She was the police, or at least she worked closely enough with detectives to know exactly what would happen. She had received a mysterious text message. She believed someone was watching her. No crime had been committed. No officer would begin a surveillance investigation based on that alone. Not yet. She slipped the photographs into her shoulder bag without taking her eyes off the window. The black sedan remained motionless. Engine off, windows dark. Waiting. Not hiding. Almost as if whoever sat inside wanted her to know they were there. Emily took a slow breath. If they were watching, she would watch back. Instead of leaving through the front door, she thanked the homeowner and quietly asked another question. "Does this house still have the old basement exit?" The woman looked surprised. "It does. My husband never uses it." Emily nodded. "May I?" "Of course." 5 minutes later, she stepped out through the narrow basement door into the alley behind the property. She moved quickly, keeping close to fences, crossing 2 backyards, then another. When she reached the next street, she circled around toward the front of the neighborhood from the opposite direction. The black sedan was still there, exactly where it had been, which meant whoever was inside had no idea she had left the house. Emily crossed the street behind parked vehicles until she was less than 50 feet away. Closer, 30 feet, 20. She could almost see through the windshield. Then, the engine started. Smooth, quiet. The sedan pulled away without haste. No screeching tires, no panic, just a calm departure. Emily watched it disappear around the corner. She had been seconds too late. Back in her car, she replayed everything in her mind. The voicemail, the missing evidence, the anonymous text, the photographs, the surveillance. Each event pointed in the same direction. Someone didn't want her asking questions, which meant the questions mattered. She opened the message again. "You should have left the photographs where they were." She noticed something she had missed before. The message had arrived only 14 seconds after she picked up the final photograph. 14 seconds. No one could have known that unless they were watching in real time. That meant one of two things. Someone had eyes on the attic, or someone already knew exactly which photograph she would find. Neither possibility was comforting. She drove straight to the Chicago Police Forensic Laboratory. The building was nearly empty by the time she arrived. Most investigators were still out on active cases. Emily used her security badge and entered the audio analysis department. Only one office still had its lights on. Detective Marcus Hale, 52 years old, 28 years with the department, one of the few detectives she trusted completely. He looked up as she entered. "You look terrible. I need a favor." He smiled. That's usually how these conversations begin. Emily placed the photographs on his desk. "I need to know if you've ever seen this man." Marcus studied the enlarged image, the blurry figure among the trees. After several moments, he slowly shook his head. "Can't identify him. I wasn't expecting you to. So what am I looking for?" Emily hesitated. Then she handed him her phone. "Listen." Marcus pressed play. 43 seconds later, he remained completely silent. Finally, he looked at Emily. "Who is she?" Emily swallowed. "My mother. The one who died?" "Yes." Marcus leaned back. "You sure?" "I've spent 12 years identifying voices. I've never been more sure of anything." Silence filled the office. Then Marcus asked the question Emily had been asking herself all day. "If that's really her," he paused, "who's buried in the cemetery?" Neither of them answered, because neither of them wanted to imagine the possibilities. Marcus stood and walked toward an old filing cabinet. "I wasn't going to tell you this." Emily looked up. "What?" "Your mother's accident wasn't originally assigned to the local police. It wasn't." He shook his head. "It started as a federal investigation." Emily frowned. "Federal? For less than 24 hours. Then, suddenly," he snapped his fingers, "it disappeared." "What do you mean, disappeared?" "The FBI withdrew. The state police withdrew. Every federal investigator left the case overnight, and nobody ever explained why." Emily stared at him. "How do you know that?" Marcus opened the cabinet, removed an old notebook. "I was a rookie. I remember because everyone thought it was strange." He turned several pages, then stopped. "I wrote everything down." Emily leaned closer. There it was, an entry dated 17 years earlier. One sentence. "Federal agents arrived at 8:42 a.m. All evidence secured. Case reassigned before sunset. Reason classified." Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Her mother's death hadn't simply been investigated. It had been classified. And someone had made sure no one ever asked why. The cemetery, Emily hadn't visited her mother's grave in almost 5 years, not because she had forgotten, because she had finally learned how to live without coming back. Now, every answer seemed to lead to the same place. If the voicemail was impossible, if the accident file had disappeared, if federal agents had classified the investigation, then perhaps the grave itself could answer the one question she was afraid to ask. Who was really buried there? By late afternoon, gray clouds hung low over Oak Ridge Memorial Cemetery. A cold wind swept across hundreds of weathered headstones. Emily parked near the entrance and walked alone toward Section D. She knew the path by heart. Row 7, Stone 43, Elizabeth Carter, 1968 to 2009. Beloved mother, beloved friend, gone too soon. Emily stopped in front of the granite marker. Nothing had changed. Fresh flowers rested beside the stone. White lilies. Someone had visited recently. That made no sense. Emily never came. She had no remaining relatives. Who kept bringing flowers? She knelt beside the grave. The petals were still damp, not from rain, from fresh water. Less than 24 hours old. Someone had been here yesterday. The same day the voicemail had supposedly been recorded. She photographed the flowers before carefully examining the ground. Old habits took over. Years of forensic work trained her eyes to notice details others ignored. Near the edge of the grave, she found a partial shoe print. Large, men's size 11. Deep tread, military-style boot. Not unusual by itself. But beside it, another print, much smaller. Women's running shoe. Neither print had been there during the last rainfall. They were fresh. Someone had stood here after the storm. Someone who wasn't Emily. "You're looking at the wrong grave," the voice came from behind her. Emily turned. An elderly groundskeeper stood 20 yards away holding a rake. His weathered face remained expressionless. "What did you say?" He slowly walked closer. "I said, you're looking at the wrong grave." Emily stared at him. "This is my mother's grave." "So the stone says. What does that mean?" The old man looked around to make sure no one else was nearby. "I've worked here 26 years. I remember every burial." Emily felt her pulse quicken. "You remember hers?" He nodded. "I remember because it wasn't normal." "How?" "The family wasn't allowed to see the coffin." Emily frowned. "I did see it. You saw the outside. You never saw inside." Emily opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. He was right. The casket had remained closed. Everyone said the fire had made viewing impossible. At 19, she had accepted that explanation without question. Now, it sounded different. The groundskeeper leaned on the rake. There were government people here. Emily froze. What kind of government people? They didn't say. Dark suits? Black vehicles? They arrived before sunrise and stayed until after the funeral. Her breathing became shallow. The police never mentioned that. They weren't supposed to. He looked directly into her eyes. They told everyone they were insurance investigators. They weren't. Emily felt the world shifting beneath her. "How do you know?" The old man smiled sadly. "One of them forgot something." "What?" He reached into the pocket of his work jacket, pulled out a small leather wallet. Inside was an identification card. Old, worn. The photograph had faded, but the words were still readable. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Thomas Mercer, I found it near your mother's grave after everyone left. Emily stared at the badge. "You kept this?" "I tried returning it. No one ever came. No one ever asked. So I kept it. For 17 years. Emily carefully photographed the identification card. Then looked back at the grave. One question echoed louder than all the others. If FBI agents had attended a simple funeral, what exactly had they been burying? As she thanked the groundskeeper and started toward her car, she noticed something strange. A black SUV rolled slowly past the cemetery entrance. It didn't stop. It didn't enter. It simply drove by, exactly once, then disappeared around the corner. Emily watched until it was gone. Her phone vibrated. Another anonymous message. This one contained only 6 words. Stop digging before they notice. No signature, no number, just 6 words. Emily looked back toward her mother's grave. For the first time in 17 years, she wasn't mourning the woman beneath the stone. She was beginning to wonder whether anyone was there at all. The forgotten agent. Emily drove straight back to the forensic lab. The FBI identification card lay on the passenger seat beside her phone. She had photographed every angle before handing the original back to the cemetery groundskeeper. One name kept repeating in her mind. Thomas Mercer. If he had been at the funeral, then he knew something. The question was simple. Was he still alive? The laboratory database wasn't connected to federal personnel files, but Marcus Hale knew someone who could help. Retired Detective Alan Brooks had spent 35 years working joint investigations with the FBI before retiring 2 years earlier. If anyone remembered Special Agent Thomas Mercer, it would be Alan. Marcus answered on the second ring. I need another favor. He laughed. This case is getting expensive. Can you find someone? Depends who. Emily took a breath. Thomas Mercer. Silence. Far longer than before. Finally, Marcus spoke. Where did you hear that name? So you know him. I know of him. What can you tell me? Marcus hesitated. Not over the phone. An hour later, they sat inside a quiet diner overlooking the Chicago River. Marcus placed 2 coffees on the table. He didn't touch his. I called Alan. Emily leaned forward. And? He remembers Mercer. What did he say? Marcus looked around before lowering his voice. He said Mercer wasn't an ordinary FBI agent. Emily frowned. What does that mean? He specialized in witness protection. Emily blinked. Witness protection? Marcus nodded. People only met Thomas Mercer when someone's identity had to disappear. Emily felt a chill. My mother wasn't a witness. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid a folded napkin across the table. Alan Brooks had written 3 words. Never found body. Emily stared at them. What does this mean? Marcus sighed. Alan says Mercer hated one thing. What? Closed coffins. Emily frowned. He believed families deserved certainty. He once told Alan. Marcus looked Emily directly in the eyes. Never bury a body nobody has positively identified. Emily's breathing slowed. I identified my mother's body. Marcus slowly shook his head. No. You identified jewelry. Emily froze. What? The official report says the remains couldn't be visually identified. Emily reached for her phone, pulled up the digital copy of the coroner's summary. Marcus was right. She had never noticed the wording before. Identification confirmed through personal effects provided by next of kin. Not facial recognition, not fingerprints, not dental records. Jewelry, a wedding ring, a necklace, a wristwatch. That was all. 17 years. And she had never questioned a single word. Marcus pushed another document across the table. I had someone retrieve this. It was a newspaper clipping. Small, barely half a page. Dated the morning after the accident. Emily read the headline. FBI agent killed in traffic collision. She frowned. What does this have to do with my mother? Marcus tapped the photograph. Emily looked closer. Her blood ran cold. The smiling man beneath the headline was unmistakable. Thomas Mercer. The same name. The same face. The same FBI badge found at her mother's grave. According to the article, he had died only 6 hours after her mother's accident. Different highway, different county, different crash. Emily looked up. You think it's connected? Marcus answered quietly. I think 2 fatal accidents involving the same classified investigation. He paused. Is one coincidence too many? Emily folded the newspaper carefully. One question refused to leave her mind. If Thomas Mercer died the day after her mother, who removed the accident file last week? Dead men couldn't erase evidence, unless Thomas Mercer hadn't died either. As Emily stepped outside the diner, evening shadows stretched across the empty parking lot. Her phone vibrated. Another anonymous message. This one contained a photograph. Nothing else. She opened it. The image had clearly been taken from a distance. A woman leaving the cemetery. Dark jacket, brown shoulder bag, standing beside her car. Emily zoomed in. The woman was her. The photograph had been taken less than 2 hours earlier. At the bottom of the image, someone had typed a single sentence. "You're asking the wrong questions." Emily slowly looked around the parking lot. Across the street, a man wearing a dark baseball cap lowered a camera, then calmly walked away into the crowd. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He wanted Emily to know. Every move she made was being recorded, the camera that shouldn't exist. Emily stood frozen on the sidewalk. The man with the camera never looked back. Within seconds, he disappeared into the evening crowd, as if he had never been there. She considered chasing him. Every instinct told her to run. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was. Years of working with investigators had taught her one simple lesson. People who wanted to be caught rarely traveled alone. She slowly scanned both sides of the street. A young woman pretending to read a bus schedule, an elderly man feeding pigeons, a delivery van parked with its engine running. Normal, or carefully designed to look normal. Emily couldn't tell anymore. She looked down at the photograph again. It had been taken with a professional telephoto lens. The angle placed the photographer somewhere inside the cemetery, not outside. That meant someone had followed her through the graves without her noticing. Whoever they were trained. Marcus answered on the first ring. "I think they're escalating." "What happened?" Emily explained everything. The cemetery, the photograph, the anonymous messages. Marcus was quiet. Then he asked one question. "Did they threaten you? Oh. Did they tell you to stop? Oh. They said I'm asking the wrong questions." Marcus sighed. "That's worse." Emily frowned. "Why?" "Because it means they don't want you dead. They want to control where you look." 20 minutes later, Marcus arrived. He examined the photograph carefully, then zoomed into the background. "Hold on." Emily leaned closer. "What?" Marcus enlarged the reflection in the driver's side window of Emily's car. The image was distorted, barely recognizable. But another person stood behind the photographer. A tall man, suit, tie, holding what looked like a leather briefcase. His face remained hidden by glare. Marcus frowned. "They're working together." Emily looked again. "No," Marcus pointed toward the reflection. "Look at his left hand." Emily squinted. A ring, large, square, dark. An unusual signet ring engraved with a symbol, a circle. Inside the circle, 3 vertical lines. Emily had never seen it before. Marcus hadn't either. He quietly saved the image. "I'm sending this to every detective I know. If it's a gang, someone will recognize it." Emily drove home just after 9. For the first time since receiving the voicemail, she checked every mirror before entering the underground parking garage. No black sedan, no black SUV. Nothing. She almost laughed at herself. Maybe the surveillance had ended. Maybe they had made their point. She locked her apartment door behind her. Deadbolt, security chain, alarm, everything normal. She finally allowed herself to breathe. Then, something smelled wrong. Not smoke. Not gas. Coffee. Fresh coffee. Emily slowly turned toward the kitchen. A ceramic mug sat on the counter. Steam still rising. She lived alone. No one else had a key. The mug hadn't been there that morning. Beside it rested a small white envelope. No stamp, no name, only one word written across the front. Emily. Every muscle in her body tightened. She didn't touch the envelope immediately. Instead, she walked through the apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, closet, laundry room, balcony. Empty. No sign of forced entry. Nothing missing. Nothing broken. Everything exactly where she had left it. Except the coffee and the envelope. She returned to the kitchen. Using a clean handkerchief, she carefully opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. Printed. Not handwritten. The message contained only 3 lines. You believe your mother sent the voicemail. She didn't. But she wanted you to hear it. No signature. No explanation. Emily read the words again. Her pulse raced. If her mother hadn't sent the recording, then who had? And how could a dead woman want anything? Before she could think further, her phone rang. Not a text, not a voicemail. A real call. A known number. She answered. No one spoke. Only breathing. Slow. Steady. Then, an elderly man's voice quietly whispered 6 words. Look behind the family photograph. The line went dead. Emily turned toward the living room. On the bookshelf stood the only framed family photograph she owned. The same photograph that had remained untouched for 17 years. The hidden letter. Emily stared at the family photograph across the room. It was the same frame that had sat on her bookshelf for years. Oak wood, 8 by 10 inches. Nothing unusual. She had dusted it hundreds of times. Never once had she looked behind it. The anonymous caller knew exactly where to send her, which meant one terrifying possibility. Someone knew her apartment as well as she did. She didn't rush. That was exactly what fear wanted her to do. Instead, she opened a drawer and pulled out a pair of latex gloves. Evidence first, questions later. She photographed the frame from every angle before touching it. No fingerprints, no scratches, no obvious signs that anyone had opened it recently. She carefully removed the backing. The photograph slid onto the table. Nothing, just cardboard. Emily frowned. Had someone been lying? She picked up the backing one more time. Something felt off, too heavy. She tapped it gently. A dull sound. Not hollow, not solid. Layered. Using the edge of a utility knife, she separated the cardboard. A thin compartment appeared between 2 sheets. Inside, folded into a square no larger than a credit card, was a piece of yellowed paper. Emily stopped breathing. Someone had hidden it there deliberately. Long before tonight. The paper was brittle with age. One careless movement could destroy it. She unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was instantly recognizable. Her mother's. No doubt. No hesitation. Elizabeth Carter had written these words. But unlike the voicemail, this was old. Very old. The ink had faded. The edges had darkened with time. Across the top of the page were 6 words. If you're reading this, below them, if this letter reaches you, then something has gone terribly wrong. Emily felt tears fill her eyes. She continued reading. You will probably believe I died in an accident. If that happens, it was never an accident. Emily covered her mouth. The exact same sentence. The voicemail hadn't introduced a new idea. It had quoted this letter. Someone already possessed the original message. Someone had recreated her mother's words. The letter continued. There are people who don't want certain information to exist. I cannot tell you everything. Not here. If I write names, they'll know. Emily frowned. Who were they? Government? Criminals? Someone else entirely? Her mother never explained. Instead, the letter shifted abruptly. Trust only the evidence. Never trust the story they give you. Emily whispered the words aloud. It sounded exactly like something she would tell herself as a forensic analyst. Had her entire career been shaped by this letter, without ever reading it? Near the bottom of the page, one sentence had been crossed out violently with black ink. Not erased. Destroyed. Emily held the paper beneath a forensic light. The original writing slowly emerged beneath the ink. She could only make out 4 words. Locker. Union. Station. 218. Locker 218. Union Station. Emily's pulse quickened. Why cross it out? Her mother clearly wanted to hide that information, or someone else had hidden it afterward. The difference mattered. A lot. She carefully examined the envelope again. Nothing. Then she noticed something almost invisible, pressed into the paper rather than written. Indented letters. Someone had written another message on the sheet that once lay above it. Emily angled a flashlight across the surface. The impressions became readable. Don't let her find. The final word had disappeared. Emily stared at the unfinished sentence. Don't let her find. Find what? The locker? The truth? Someone? At that exact moment. Every light in the apartment went out. Darkness swallowed the room. The refrigerator stopped humming. The air conditioner fell silent. A complete power outage. Emily reached instinctively for her phone. Its flashlight illuminated only a narrow circle ahead. Outside. The rest of the city still had power. Only her building was dark. Someone had shut off her electricity. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed from her apartment door. Knock. 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 Not loud. Not hurried. Almost polite. Emily didn't move. Neither did the person outside. A full minute passed. Then a voice spoke through the closed door. Calm, male, older. We know you found the letter. Silence. Then the voice added one final sentence. You have exactly 24 hours before Locker 218 is emptied forever. Footsteps slowly faded down the hallway. Emily remained frozen. She didn't open the door. Not immediately. Because she knew. Whoever had come here had wanted her to hear every single word. Locker 218. Emily didn't move until the footsteps had completely disappeared. Her phone still illuminated the apartment with a narrow beam of white light. Silence. No voices. No elevator. No doors closing. Whoever had come to her apartment knew exactly what they wanted. Not to threaten her. To direct her. Locker 218. Union Station. 24 hours. It sounded less like a warning, and more like a countdown. She finally approached the front door. Slowly. Carefully. Years of forensic training reminded her not to destroy potential evidence. She slipped on another pair of latex gloves before unlocking the deadbolt. The hallway outside was empty. No people. No movement. Only emergency lights glowing dimly near the elevators. She examined the floor. Almost immediately she found something. A single muddy footprint. Large, military-style boot. Exactly the same tread pattern she had photographed beside her mother's grave earlier that afternoon. The same person, or someone wearing the same boots. Either way, whoever had visited the cemetery had now entered her building. Emily photographed every inch of the hallway, the footprint, the doorframe, the elevator buttons. Then she noticed another detail. A tiny black object resting against the wall, no larger than a shirt button. She crouched, picked it up with tweezers from her forensic kit. A miniature wireless camera. Still warm. Still powered on. Someone had been watching her apartment door in real time. She turned the device over. No serial number. No manufacturer. Professional equipment. Designed to leave no worse. She sealed it inside an evidence bag. Someone had made a mistake, and mistakes left evidence. The building manager restored power 20 minutes later. A transformer failed, he explained. Emily nodded politely. She didn't believe him. Too many coincidences had happened in less than 48 hours. Coincidences no longer existed. Back inside, she placed the hidden letter beside the mysterious camera. 2 pieces of evidence, both pointing toward the same destination. Locker 218. She opened her laptop. Chicago Union Station contained more than 400 public storage lockers. Most were located near the lower concourse. Some had remained untouched for years. Others were rented daily by travelers. Locker 218. Nothing unusual. Nothing remarkable. Exactly the kind of place where someone could hide something in plain sight. Marcus answered her call immediately. "Please tell me you stayed home." "I did, for about 20 minutes." Marcus sighed. "What now?" Emily explained everything. The letter, the visitor, the camera, the locker. Silence followed. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You're not going." Emily looked out the window. "I have to." "No, it's probably a trap." "It probably is. So don't walk into it." Emily leaned back. "If someone wanted me dead, they've had plenty of chances." Marcus didn't answer, because he knew she was right. The surveillance, the messages, the voicemail. Everything had pushed her toward answers, not away from them. "They want me to find something." Marcus rubbed his forehead. "And that bothers me more than if they wanted to kill you." The next morning arrived cold and overcast. Emily dressed simply. Gray coat, baseball cap, no police identification, no jewelry, nothing memorable. She carried only 3 things: her phone, the hidden letter, and a compact digital recorder. If someone was waiting for her, every conversation would be preserved. Union Station buzzed with thousands of commuters. Business travelers hurried toward platforms. Tourists pulled rolling suitcases across polished floors. Announcements echoed through the enormous hall. To everyone else, it was just another Tuesday morning. To Emily, it felt like entering enemy territory. She walked calmly toward the public lockers. Rows upon rows of identical steel doors stretched across the corridor. 201, 202, 203. Her heartbeat quickened. 210, 214, 217. Then, 218. The locker stood exactly where the letter suggested. Old, gray, slight scratches around the keyhole, no visible damage, no sign anyone had opened it recently. Emily reached for the handle. Locked. Of course. She crouched to inspect the lock. No scratches, no forced entry. Whoever rented it had done so legally. Then something caught her attention. A tiny strip of white tape hidden beneath the locker door, almost invisible. She carefully peeled it away. Written in tiny black letters were 3 words. "Not this one." Emily frowned. She looked at locker 218 again, then instinctively turned toward the locker beside it. 219. Unlike every other locker, 219 showed fresh scratches around the keyhole. Someone had deliberately wanted her to open the wrong locker, and someone else had risked everything to quietly tell her she was looking in the wrong place. Locker 219. Emily stepped back from locker 218. For several seconds, she simply stared at the tiny strip of tape still resting in her gloved hand. Not this one. Someone had anticipated exactly what she would do. Someone knew she would come to Union Station, and someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to redirect her. The question wasn't who. The question was why. She shifted her attention to locker 219. At first glance, it looked identical to every other locker. Same faded gray paint, same manufacturer, same dimensions. But once she crouched beside it, the differences became obvious. The scratches around the keyhole weren't old. The metal still reflected light where the paint had been stripped away. Someone had recently inserted the wrong key several times, or someone had been in a hurry. Emily slipped a small flashlight from her pocket. Inside the keyhole, tiny brass filings, fresh, no dust, no rust. Someone had accessed this locker within the last day. A janitor pushed a cleaning cart down the hallway. Emily waited until he passed before taking another photograph. She zoomed in. One more detail appeared, a faint fingerprint. Not on the locker, on the polished steel handle. Visible only because someone with oily hands had touched it. She smiled. For the first time in 2 days, someone had finally left real evidence. Looking for something? Emily looked over her shoulder. A station security officer approached casually. Late 40s. Friendly smile. Coffee cup in one hand. Radio clipped to his belt. I think I rented the wrong locker years ago. The officer chuckled. Wouldn't be the first. Emily nodded politely. Do these lockers get cleaned often? Every night. She frowned. Every night? That's policy. Emily glanced back at locker 219. If every locker handle was cleaned nightly, then the fingerprint couldn't be older than this morning. Someone had touched it recently. Very recently. The officer noticed her studying the locker. You know, he said. Funny thing. Emily looked up. What? A man asked about this exact locker yesterday. Her heartbeat quickened. What did he look like? The officer thought for a moment. Tall, gray coat, black baseball cap, maybe 60. Emily froze. The description matched the anonymous visitor outside her apartment. Did he open it? The officer slowly shook his head. No. He seemed disappointed. Then he left. Alone? The officer frowned. I don't think so. There was another man waiting near the entrance. They never spoke. They just... He searched for the right word, looked at each other. Professional. Emily had seen that behavior before. People trained to communicate without obvious conversation. She thanked the officer and waited until he disappeared around the corner. Then she pulled a small forensic magnifier from her bag. The fingerprint on the handle became clearer. It wasn't complete. Only part of a thumb. Enough for comparison. Not enough for identification. Still, better than nothing. She carefully lifted the print using forensic tape. One more piece of evidence. One more mistake made by someone who believed they were invisible. Suddenly, a metallic click echoed behind her. Locker 219. The door had unlocked. Emily hadn't touched it. She stared. Slowly. The steel door swung open by itself, only a few inches. Inside. Darkness. No movement. No sound. Someone had remotely released the lock, or someone else had just opened it from the opposite side. Emily took one cautious step forward. Another. She slowly pulled the locker door fully open. Empty. Completely empty. Except for one object. A small digital voice recorder, no larger than the palm of her hand. Its red indicator light blinked steadily. Recording. Someone had activated it only moments ago. Emily picked it up carefully. The display showed exactly one saved file. File 001. Duration 2 minutes, 48 seconds. She pressed play. Static. Then, a man's voice. Calm, measured. If you're listening to this. The recording paused for nearly 3 seconds. Then, Agent Mercer failed. Emily's entire body went rigid. The voice continued. My name is David Ross. I worked with your mother, and if this recording survived, it means someone inside the government betrayed all of us. The message suddenly stopped. The recorder screen flashed. Battery low. Then, without warning, every light inside Union Station went out. The enormous terminal fell into darkness. People gasped. Children cried. Emergency alarms began to sound. Emily instinctively gripped the recorder tighter. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard footsteps, not running, walking, toward her, slow, deliberate, and getting closer. The blackout darkness swallowed Union Station in an instant. The overhead lights vanished. The digital departure boards went black. Escalators stopped mid-motion. For one long second, the entire terminal fell silent. Then Hisaz erupted. People shouted. Children cried. Someone dropped a suitcase that burst open across the marble floor. Emergency lights flickered weakly to life, bathing the station in a dull red glow. It wasn't enough to illuminate faces, only silhouettes. Emily slipped the digital recorder into her coat pocket. Instinct told her one thing. Someone hadn't caused the blackout to escape. They had caused it to approach. The footsteps continued. Slow, steady, never hurried. Each one echoed across the empty locker corridor. Emily backed against the cold steel lockers. Her breathing slowed. She forced herself to listen instead of panic. One person. Heavy shoes, leather soles. Male. Approximately 200 pounds. Walking with complete confidence. Not searching. He already knew where she was. A shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor. Tall, broad shoulders, long dark overcoat, black leather gloves. The man's face remained hidden beneath the emergency lighting. He stopped 15 feet away. Neither of them spoke. Finally, the stranger broke the silence. You shouldn't have played the recording. His voice was calm, almost sympathetic. Emily recognized it immediately. The same voice that had whispered through her apartment door. The same voice that had called her the night before. "Who are you?" The man ignored the question. "Give me the recorder." Emily didn't move. "Tell me who you are." Silence. Then, "My name doesn't matter anymore. But yours does." Emily took one cautious step backward. "So, you're the one following me?" "No." The answer came instantly. "I'm the one trying to keep you alive." Emily laughed bitterly. By breaking into my apartment? By sending anonymous messages? By watching me? The man lowered his head. If I had introduced myself, you'd already be dead. Emily stared at him. What does that mean? He looked toward the crowded station behind them. They're here, Emily frowned. Who? Before he could answer, another voice shouted from somewhere inside the darkness. There! The stranger's posture changed instantly. Every trace of calm disappeared. He looked back at Emily. You have less than 60 seconds. He reached into his coat. Emily instinctively stepped back. Instead of a weapon, he removed a small brass key. Old, worn. Its tag carried a single number, 731. He tossed it toward her. Emily caught it instinctively. What is this? Safety. I don't understand. You will. 3 men emerged from the darkness at the opposite end of the corridor. Business suits, black gloves. No luggage. No station employees moved like that. They spread out without speaking. One left, one right, one straight ahead. They weren't searching. They were containing. The stranger looked directly at Emily. Run. She hesitated. What about you? His expression remained unreadable. They're not here for me. They're here for what's in your pocket. The recorder. The first suited man accelerated into a run. The second reached beneath his jacket. Emily couldn't see what he was holding. She didn't wait to find out. She turned and sprinted toward the main concourse. Crowds were everywhere. Perfect cover. She weaved between travelers, suitcases, families, business commuters. Behind her, she heard shouting, then a loud crash. Someone had tackled someone else. She looked back only once. The mysterious stranger had intercepted the first pursuer. The 2 men slammed into a row of empty lockers. The recorder remained safe inside Emily's pocket. For now, she burst into the crowded central hall. Emergency lighting continued flashing overhead. Station security rushed in every direction. Nobody seemed to know why the power had failed. Emily blended into the crowd, slowed her pace, forced herself to breathe normally. Don't run. Running attracts attention. She repeated the words silently. 20 seconds later. The station lights suddenly returned. Everything looked normal again. Passengers applauded. Departure boards restarted. Announcements resumed. It was as if nothing had happened. Except the 3 suited men had vanished. So had the stranger. Emily hurried toward the nearest exit. Outside, cold evening air hit her face. She finally stopped beneath a streetlight. Her hands trembled as she removed the brass key. 731. Nothing else. No company name. No address. No clue. Then she noticed tiny engraved letters she had missed before. B. Blackwater, her mother's lake cabin, the same place that had supposedly burned to the ground 17 years earlier. Emily's heart pounded. Blackwater. Everything kept leading back to Blackwater. The voicemail, the photographs, the hidden letter. Now, this key. Before she could think any further, her phone vibrated. Another anonymous message. Only one sentence. They know you have the key. Emily slowly looked across the street, parked beneath a broken street lamp. The familiar black sedan waited silently. Its headlights remained off. Its engine idled quietly. This time, the driver's door slowly opened, and someone stepped out. The blackout darkness swallowed Union Station in an instant. The overhead lights vanished. The digital departure boards went black. Escalators stopped mid-motion. For one long second, the entire terminal fell silent. Then chaos erupted. People shouted. Children cried. Someone dropped a suitcase that burst open across the marble floor. Emergency lights flickered weakly to life, bathing the station in a dull red glow. It wasn't enough to illuminate faces, only silhouettes. Emily slipped the digital recorder into her coat pocket. Instinct told her one thing. Someone hadn't caused the blackout to escape. They had caused it to approach. The footsteps continued. Slow. Steady. Never hurried. Each one echoed across the empty locker corridor. Emily backed against the cold steel lockers. Her breathing slowed. She forced herself to listen instead of panic. One person. Heavy shoes. Leather soles. Male. Approximately 200 pounds. Walking with complete confidence. Not searching. He already knew where she was. A shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor. Tall, broad shoulders, long dark overcoat, black leather gloves. The man's face remained hidden beneath the emergency lighting. He stopped 15 feet away. Neither of them spoke. Finally, the stranger broke the silence. You shouldn't have played the recording. His voice was calm, almost sympathetic. Emily recognized it immediately. The same voice that had whispered through her apartment door, the same voice that had called her the night before. Who are you? The man ignored the question. Give me the recorder. Emily didn't move. Tell me who you are. Silence. Then, my name doesn't matter anymore, but yours does. Emily took one cautious step backward. So, you're the one following me? No. The answer came instantly. I'm the one trying to keep you alive. Emily laughed bitterly. By breaking into my apartment? By sending anonymous messages? By watching me? The man lowered his head. If I had introduced myself, you'd already be dead. Emily stared at him. What does that mean? He looked toward the crowded station behind them. They're here. Emily frowned. Who? Before he could answer, another voice shouted from somewhere inside the darkness. There! The stranger's posture changed instantly. Every trace of calm disappeared. He looked back at Emily. You have less than 60 seconds. He reached into his coat. Emily instinctively stepped back. Instead of a weapon, he removed a small brass key. Old. Worn. Its tag carried a single number. 731. He tossed it toward her. Emily caught it instinctively. What is this? Safety. I don't understand. You will. 3 men emerged from the darkness at the opposite end of the corridor. Business suits, black gloves, no luggage, no station employees moved like that. They spread out without speaking. One left, one right, one straight ahead. They weren't searching. They were containing. The stranger looked directly at Emily. Run. She hesitated. What about you? His expression remained unreadable. They're not here for me. They're here for what's in your pocket. The recorder. The first suited man accelerated into a run. The second reached beneath his jacket. Emily couldn't see what he was holding. She didn't wait to find out. She turned and sprinted toward the main concourse. Crowds were everywhere. Perfect cover. She weaved between travelers, suitcases, families, business commuters. Behind her, she heard shouting. Then a loud crash. Someone had tackled someone else. She looked back only once. The mysterious stranger had intercepted the first pursuer. The two men slammed into a row of empty lockers. The recorder remained safe inside Emily's pocket. For now, she burst into the crowded central hall. Emergency lighting continued flashing overhead. Station security rushed in every direction. Nobody seemed to know why the power had failed. Emily blended into the crowd, slowed her pace, forced herself to breathe normally. "Don't run. Running attracts attention." She repeated the words silently. 20 seconds later, the station lights suddenly returned. Everything looked normal again. Passengers applauded. Departure boards restarted. Announcements resumed. It was as if nothing had happened. Except the three suited men had vanished. So had the stranger. Emily hurried toward the nearest exit. Outside, cold evening air hit her face. She finally stopped beneath a streetlight. Her hands trembled as she removed the brass key. 731. Nothing else. No company name. No address. No clue. Then she noticed tiny engraved letters she had missed before. B.W. Blackwater. Her mother's lake cabin. The same place that had supposedly burned to the ground 17 years earlier. Emily's heart pounded. Blackwater. Everything kept leading back to Blackwater. The voicemail, the photographs, the hidden letter. Now, this key. Before she could think any further, her phone vibrated. Another anonymous message. Only one sentence. "They know you have the key." Emily slowly looked across the street, parked beneath a broken street lamp. The familiar black sedan waited silently. Its headlights remained off. Its engine idled quietly. This time, the driver's door slowly opened, and someone stepped out. Blackwater. Emily didn't stop running until the city disappeared behind her. Her hands trembled so violently she almost dropped the steering wheel twice before reaching the interstate. She didn't know whether Samuel Grant was alive. She didn't know who the four men were. She didn't even know whether Key 731 actually opened anything. But one thing had become painfully clear. Every clue, every message, every photograph, every stranger, every risk had pointed toward exactly one place: Blackwater. The highway stretched endlessly beneath a gray afternoon sky. Rain began falling again, not the violent storm from 2 nights earlier. A slow, steady rain, the kind that blurred memories as much as windshields. Emily glanced repeatedly into her rearview mirror. No black sedan, no black SUV. Nothing. For the first time in days, she was alone. Or so she hoped. 3 hours later, civilization slowly disappeared. Gas stations became fewer. Cell service faded. The road narrowed from 4 lanes to 2. Eventually, only dense pine forest surrounded her. She hadn't been back to Blackwater since the funeral. 17 years. The landscape looked smaller than she remembered. The lake, the hills, the abandoned ranger station. Time had changed everything. Yet somehow, it all felt exactly the same. A weathered wooden sign finally appeared beside the road. Blackwater Lake population, 412. Emily slowed instinctively. The old diner still stood near the intersection. The bait shop remained boarded up. A small grocery store had replaced the gas station she remembered as a child. Life had continued here, without her. She parked near the lake. Cold wind rolled across the water. The surface remained perfectly still, almost unnaturally still. Far across the lake, she saw it. The cabin, or what remained of it. She frowned. Every official report stated the cabin had burned completely to the ground. It hadn't. The roof had collapsed. One wall had fallen. The porch no longer existed. But the stone foundation remained. So did most of the chimney, enough to recognize it instantly. Someone had exaggerated the fire, or lied about it entirely. Emily crossed the old wooden footbridge leading toward the property. Each step echoed loudly. No birds, no insects, only the sound of wind moving through pine trees. The silence felt wrong, too complete. Halfway across the bridge, she noticed something carved into the railing. 3 vertical lines, inside a circle. Emily stopped walking. Her heartbeat quickened. The same symbol. The signet ring. The reflection in the black sedan. Someone connected to this place had marked the bridge. Years ago. Or yesterday. She couldn't tell. The cabin stood exactly where memory had left it. Weathered. Broken. Abandoned. At least, that was the first impression. Then Emily noticed something impossible. Fresh tire tracks. Deep. Wide. Less than a day old. Someone had driven here recently. She crouched beside the tracks. Large SUV. Off-road tires. Heavy vehicle. Not local. Not old. Fresh enough that rain hadn't yet softened the edges. Someone was already here. Emily slowly approached the front door, or what remained of it. The hinges had rusted away long ago. Inside, dust covered almost everything. Broken furniture, collapsed ceiling beams, charred wooden floorboards. Nature had begun reclaiming the cabin. Yet one thing immediately caught her attention. Near the fireplace, a clean footprint crossed the dusty floor. Only one. Everything else remained untouched. Someone had stepped inside recently. Very recently. Emily followed the footprint. It stopped beside the old stone fireplace. Nothing else. No second footprint. No exit. As if whoever made it had simply vanished. She examined the fireplace carefully. The stones appeared original. Except one. The center stone sat slightly lower than the others. Almost impossible to notice. Emily remembered the brass key. 731. She looked around. No lock. No keyhole. Nothing. Then, she spotted a tiny metal plate hidden beneath decades of soot, stamped into the steel. Lock 731. Her pulse accelerated. This wasn't coincidence. Samuel had been telling the truth. She reached into her coat pocket, removed the brass key. Slowly, carefully, she inserted it into the concealed lock. The key turned smoothly. Somewhere deep beneath the cabin, a heavy metallic mechanism groaned to life. Then, the entire stone fireplace shifted backward by several inches. Cold air rushed upward from below. A hidden staircase emerged from complete darkness. Emily stared into the opening. Someone had built an underground room beneath the cabin, and for 17 years, nobody had found it. Until now. The hidden room. The cold air smelled untouched. Not damp, not rotten. Preserved. As though the space beneath the cabin had been sealed away from time itself. Emily stood motionless at the top of the narrow staircase. The stone fireplace remained open behind her. The mechanism had stopped moving. Silence returned. Absolute silence. She activated the flashlight on her phone. Its beam disappeared into darkness. The stairs descended farther than she expected. Far below, concrete, not earth. Someone had invested enormous effort building whatever lay beneath the cabin. She hesitated. Every instinct warned her not to go alone, but every answer she had chased for 3 days waited below. She took the first step. The old concrete staircase barely creaked. Second step. Third. Cold air became noticeably cooler. After nearly 30 feet, her shoes finally touched the floor. The room before her wasn't a basement. It was a bunker. Reinforced concrete walls, steel ceiling supports, industrial ventilation ducts, emergency lights mounted along the walls. Most no longer worked. Dust covered almost everything, yet the room remained astonishingly intact. Someone had built this place to survive catastrophe. The flashlight swept slowly across the room. Metal filing cabinets, old computers, maps pinned across one wall, a long wooden table, boxes carefully labeled by year, 2003, 2004, 2005. Emily froze. The final box. 2006. The year her mother supposedly died. Nothing existed after that. She approached the table. A thick layer of dust covered every surface, except one spot. A clean rectangle, about the size of a briefcase. Something had rested there. Recently. Someone had removed it. Emily gently touched the clean surface. No dust, no moisture. Whoever had taken it had done so within the last 24 hours. She wasn't the first person to discover the bunker. She was simply too late. Suddenly, a faint ticking sound echoed somewhere overhead. Emily stopped breathing. Tick, tick, tick. Not a clock. Too irregular. She slowly raised the flashlight. The sound came from an old surveillance monitor mounted high on the wall. Its screen remained black, yet a tiny green power light blinked steadily. Impossible. There was no electricity inside the ruined cabin. Unless someone had restored power. Recently. Emily searched the room more carefully. The computers were ancient, hard drives removed, desk drawers emptied. Someone had cleaned this place with remarkable precision. Almost everything useful was gone. Almost. One drawer refused to open completely. Something inside blocked it. She pulled harder. A leather-bound notebook slid onto the floor. Dark blue. Worn edges. No title. She opened the first page. The handwriting stopped her cold. Her mother's. There was no doubt. Every letter, every curve, every underline. Elizabeth Carter. Her own mother. The first entry was dated March 4th, 2005. We were wrong. We believed we were studying the lake. The lake has been studying us. Emily frowned. What did that even mean? She turned another page. April 18th. Someone copied our data. Only Samuel believes me. The others think I'm becoming paranoid. She turned another. June 2nd. Mercer says there is a leak inside the task force. Someone reports every discovery before we publish it. Then another. July 14th. If anything happens to me, never trust official reports. They already control the investigation before the crime occurs. Emily's pulse quickened. Agent Mercer, Samuel, everything connected. The final pages had been torn out, every single one, cleanly removed. Someone hadn't wanted anyone reading the ending. Emily looked around again. Whoever searched this bunker knew exactly what they were looking for. They hadn't stolen everything, only the last pages. The conclusion. A metallic click echoed somewhere behind her. Emily spun around. Nothing. The staircase remained empty. The hidden doorway above stayed open. Then, another sound. Soft. Electronic. She lowered the flashlight. On the far side of the room, one computer monitor flickered. Its screen slowly came alive. White letters appeared against a black background. Welcome back, Elizabeth. Emily stared. No one touched the keyboard. The message disappeared. Another line appeared. Identity not verified. Processing. Processing. Then the screen froze. Finally, a third sentence slowly typed itself across the monitor. Hello, Emily. We've been waiting for you. The program. Emily stood perfectly still. The glowing monitor was the only source of light inside the bunker. Hello, Emily. We've been waiting for you. The words remained on the screen, unmoving, patient. She looked around the room again. No hidden speakers, no cameras she could immediately identify. No one hiding in the shadows, only silence. Then the keyboard clicked by itself. One key, then another, as though invisible fingers rested upon it. A new line appeared. If you are reading this, Elizabeth's contingency plan has succeeded. Emily's mouth went dry. Who's typing? No answer. Instead, another sentence appeared. I am not a person. I am CIPHER. Emily frowned. CIPHER. The word sounded familiar. Not from childhood. Not from any official file. From the photograph. She quickly removed it from her pocket. Blackwater Research Team. She turned it over again. Beneath the faded handwriting, something almost invisible had been scratched into the paper years earlier. Project CIPHER. She had missed it before. The monitor continued typing. Project CIPHER was created to protect evidence. Not people. Not governments. Only the truth. Emily stepped closer. "What are you?" The screen paused, then answered. "A distributed archive. Self-verifying. Self-protecting. Self-replicating." She read the words twice. It wasn't artificial intelligence. Not exactly. It sounded more like an automated evidence vault, a system designed to preserve information even if everyone involved disappeared. Another message appeared. Elizabeth Carter. "Created my final protocol." Emily whispered softly. "My mother." Yes. She expected the task force to be compromised. She expected her own death. Emily shook her head. "No." The screen responded immediately. "Correction." She expected they would try to make her disappear. Emily felt every muscle in her body tighten. She wasn't killed in an accident. Kup. The answer appeared without hesitation. "Her death certificate is false." Emily couldn't breathe. For 17 years, she had mourned someone whose death had never been verified. Suddenly, the monitor displayed dozens of names. Most were unfamiliar. A few were highlighted in red. Elizabeth Carter, Thomas Mercer, Samuel Grant, David Ross. Beside each name appeared a single word. Active, missing, deceased, unknown. Emily's eyes stopped on her mother's name. Elizabeth Carter. Status, unknown. She stared at it. Again and again. Not deceased. Not confirmed dead. Unknown. The room suddenly felt much colder. The computer began displaying dates, photographs, satellite images, financial transfers, government authorization numbers, each connected by thin white lines across the screen. A network. Someone had spent years assembling it. One organization appeared repeatedly. Orion Directorate. Emily had never heard the name, yet it appeared beside nearly every classified document, every missing file, every sealed investigation, every altered death certificate. Project CIPHER had been tracking them for years. Without warning, every monitor in the bunker suddenly activated. 1, then 5, then 12. Dozens of black screens illuminated simultaneously, each displaying different surveillance footage. Roads, airports, government buildings, parking garages, security cameras. One monitor showed the outside of the cabin. Emily froze. A black SUV rolled slowly into view. Another followed behind it. Then a third. Doors opened. 6 armed men stepped into the clearing. One of them carried a satellite phone. Another unfolded a paper map. They weren't searching randomly. They walked directly toward the cabin, toward the hidden entrance. They knew. Someone had told them. An alarm suddenly echoed throughout the bunker. Not loud, just one steady tone. The monitors instantly switched again. Large red letters filled every screen. Unauthorized perimeter breach. Time to entry. 04:58. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. 4 minutes. 58 seconds. The screen began counting down. 04:57. 04:56. 04:55. She looked toward the staircase, then back at the monitors. There were too many. Too much evidence. She couldn't possibly carry it all. The keyboard typed one final instruction. Do not save the files. Save the key. Before Emily could understand what it meant, a section of the concrete floor beneath the main table unlocked with a heavy metallic clang. A cylindrical steel container slowly rose from beneath the floor. Exactly the size of a thermos. Matte black, featureless. One word was engraved across its side. Cipher. The cipher core. The steel cylinder locked into place with a sharp metallic click. It stood upright in the center of the bunker floor. Matte black. No seams, no hinges, no visible latch, only one engraved word. Cipher. The countdown continued across every monitor. 04:18, 04:17. Emily knelt beside the cylinder. There was nowhere to insert key 731. No keyhole, no electronic panel, nothing. She picked it up. It was surprisingly light. As she turned it over, she noticed a shallow circular indentation hidden beneath the base, exactly the diameter of the brass key. She inserted it. The key slid into place effortlessly. Nothing happened. Then she twisted. Click. A soft blue light spread beneath the cylinder. Tiny mechanical locks disengaged one after another. The top slowly separated. Inside rested a single object. Not stacks of classified documents, not hard drives, just a small titanium case, no larger than a paperback book. Stamped across its surface were 4 words. If Emily opens this. Emily's throat tightened. Her mother had expected this moment, years before it happened. The timer reached 4 minutes. 3:59, she opened the titanium case. Inside lay 3 items: a sealed envelope, a thin encrypted storage drive, and an old-fashioned cassette tape. Nothing else. She frowned. A cassette tape. Whoever designed this system had deliberately avoided modern technology. Technology could be hacked. Analog recordings could not be altered remotely. She picked up the envelope first. Across the front, written in familiar handwriting. For Emily. Only if you found me yourself. Hands shaking, she broke the seal. 1 folded page. No greeting. No explanation. Only a single sentence. If you are reading this, never believe the first truth you uncover. Emily read it again. And again. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. The bunker lights flickered. The monitors changed. The exterior cameras showed 6 men dividing into 2 teams. One moved toward the cabin entrance. The other circled into the surrounding woods. Professional. Systematic. One man remained beside the SUVs. He spoke into a satellite phone. Seconds later, another vehicle appeared on the dirt road. A dark pickup. Then another. More people. Whatever was hidden beneath Blackwater, they intended to recover it at any cost. The computer displayed another message. Primary exit compromised. Emily looked toward the staircase. 2 men had already reached the porch above. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Someone was inside the cabin. She heard heavy footsteps overhead. Wood cracked. Furniture shifted. They were searching room by room. The countdown continued. 0312. Another message appeared. Secondary exit available. A blueprint filled the central monitor. The bunker wasn't a single room. A narrow escape tunnel extended beneath the hillside, nearly 600 feet long. Its exit opened beside an abandoned boathouse on the opposite shore of Blackwater Lake. Emily memorized the route. The tunnel entrance lay behind one of the filing cabinets. She pushed the cabinet aside. A steel hatch appeared beneath it. Fresh scrape marks crossed the floor. Someone had opened it recently. Not years ago. Recently. She wasn't the only person who knew about the escape tunnel. A sudden crash echoed from above. The cabin door had been forced completely open. Voices. Muffled. Close. Emily switched off her flashlight. Only the monitor glow remained. She listened. Search everything. Check the fireplace. She has to be here. One voice sounded strangely familiar. Not from the apartment. Not from Union Station. From somewhere much older. She couldn't place it. The monitor zoomed automatically toward the lead searcher. Gray tactical jacket. Scar above the right eyebrow. Clean shaven. The camera captured his face clearly. Then the bunker computer reacted. Facial match identified. Name: Director Nathan Cross. Emily's blood ran cold. She had seen that name. Not in the bunker. In her mother's notebook. July 14th. Mercer says there is a leak inside the task force. Someone reports every discovery before we publish it. The next page had one final surviving line, squeezed into the margin. Cross knows too much. Nathan Cross. He hadn't merely inherited the conspiracy. He had been inside it from the beginning. A loud, grinding noise echoed through the bunker. The stone fireplace above shifted. Dust rained from the ceiling. Someone had activated the hidden entrance. The staircase was opening. Emily looked toward the timer. 2:31 footsteps began descending into the darkness. Slow, measured, confident. Nathan Cross wasn't sending his men first. He was coming down himself. Nathan Cross, the footsteps stopped halfway down the staircase. No one spoke. The bunker fell into complete silence. Emily remained hidden behind a row of steel filing cabinets, clutching the titanium case against her chest. The countdown continued. 2:09, a flashlight beam swept slowly across the room, not searching randomly, methodically. Someone who expected resistance. Someone who had cleared buildings before. Then a calm voice echoed through the bunker. Emily. She closed her eyes. The voice from the notebook. The voice behind 17 years of missing evidence. Nathan Cross. You don't have to hide. He descended the remaining steps one at a time. Gray tactical jacket, black gloves. The scar above his right eyebrow exactly matched the surveillance image. He carried no visible rifle, only a compact pistol resting loosely in his right hand. Not aimed. Not yet. I've been looking for you for a very long time. Emily remained silent. Cross smiled faintly. I know you're here, and I know you've opened the cipher core. Another step. I also know Elizabeth told you never to trust the first truth. Emily's grip tightened. How did he know the contents of the letter? Cross reached the center of the bunker. He slowly turned in a circle, studying the abandoned room. You know, I always admired your mother. Emily almost laughed. You murdered her. Cross stopped. No. The answer came without hesitation. I failed to save her. Emily's pulse quickened. Liar. Every instinct screamed it. Yet his voice carried something unexpected. Regret. He lowered the pistol until it pointed harmlessly toward the floor. 17 years. I've rehearsed this conversation thousands of times. Emily finally stepped from behind the filing cabinets. You expect me to believe you? I expect you to listen. Cross looked at the old computer monitors. They're showing you exactly what Elizabeth wanted. Half the story. Emily frowned. The system said my mother's status is unknown. It did, because it doesn't know. Cross met her eyes. Neither do I. Emily stared at him. My mother died. Cross slowly shook his head. That's what the paperwork says. The paperwork your people created. Our people. Emily blinked. What? Cross sighed. Project Cypher wasn't created by one side. It was created by all of us. Scientists, federal investigators, military intelligence. For one purpose. To preserve evidence that no administration could erase. Emily looked toward the notebook. Then why destroy it? I didn't. Cross answered immediately. Someone else did. He carefully removed a folded photograph from his jacket. Emily recognized it instantly. The same Blackwater team photograph Samuel had shown her, except this copy contained one additional person, standing at the edge of the frame, almost cropped out. Nathan Cross, younger, smiling beside Elizabeth Carter. Emily looked from the photograph to the man standing before her. You worked together. For years. Cross nodded. She trusted me. Until the leak. Emily's voice hardened. The leak was you. No. Cross's expression darkened. I was the man trying to find the leak. A monitor suddenly emitted a sharp electronic tone. Another team had entered the cabin. The computer automatically switched camera angles. 6 additional armed men surrounded the structure. Cross looked at the screen. His face lost all color. "They're here already." Emily frowned. "Your people." Cross looked directly at her. "No. They're the reason your mother disappeared." Emily felt the room tilt beneath her feet. "What are you talking about?" Cross pointed toward the screen. The lead vehicle door opened. A woman stepped out. Mid-50s, black coat, short silver hair. She removed dark sunglasses and calmly surveyed the clearing. The bunker computer instantly reacted. Identity confirmed. Orion Directorate. Executive Command. Evelyn Shaw. Threat level. Maximum. Cross whispered only 2 words. "We're finished." The emergency timer abruptly vanished. Every monitor switched to a single message. Manual override detected. Security protocol canceled. Someone outside had taken complete control of the bunker. The ventilation system shut down. Steel doors throughout the complex began locking automatically, one after another. Clang, clang, clang. Emily looked at Cross. "You said there was an escape tunnel." "There is." Cross's voice was quiet, but someone reached it before we did. At that exact moment, a metallic sound echoed from behind them. Not from the staircase, from the escape hatch. Someone was unlocking it. From the other side. The woman who wasn't dead, every eye turned toward the escape hatch. The steel locking wheel rotated slowly. Once, twice, 3 full turns. Then, silence. Emily and Nathan Cross stood frozen. Neither dared move. The hatch rose only a few inches. A narrow beam of daylight spilled into the bunker. A gloved hand appeared, not reaching for a weapon, reaching for the edge of the hatch. The figure climbed through with surprising ease. Dark hiking clothes, rain-soaked boots, gray backpack, face hidden beneath a hood. The stranger landed lightly on the concrete floor, without looking at either of them. The newcomer spoke. "You're both late." A woman's voice. Calm, controlled, familiar. Emily's heartbeat stopped. Impossible. No. Not possible. The hood slowly fell backward. Silver strands of hair framed a weathered face. Older. Thinner. Scar across the left temple. But unmistakable. The eyes. Emily had seen those eyes every morning in her own mirror. The woman looked directly at her. "Hello, Emily." Emily couldn't breathe. The titanium case slipped from her hands and struck the concrete floor. "No." The word escaped as little more than a whisper. The woman smiled sadly. "I know." Emily staggered backward. "You. My name is Elizabeth Carter." "No. My mother died." "I know that's what you were told." Elizabeth nodded gently. "I helped them tell you that." The room disappeared around Emily. 17 years. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every anniversary at the cemetery. Every tear. Every unanswered question. All built upon a lie. She wanted to scream. To run. To embrace the woman standing before her. Instead, she stood perfectly still. Nathan Cross lowered his head. "I told you, I never saw her body." Emily turned sharply. "You knew." "I suspected." Cross answered quietly. "I hadn't seen her in 17 years. Elizabeth looked toward him. "You kept your promise." Cross gave a tired smile. Barely. Emily stared at the woman she had buried. "Why?" One word. It contained 17 years of grief. Elizabeth closed her eyes. "Because if they believed I was alive, they would never stop hunting you." Emily shook her head. "They hunted me anyway. They watched me. They followed me. They killed Samuel." Pain crossed Elizabeth's face. "I know, and I'm sorry." Emily's voice cracked. "Sorry? You let me believe you were dead." I watched them lower an empty coffin. I spent half my life talking to a gravestone. Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears. I watched it too. Emily froze. What? I watched my own funeral, from 300 yards away. I wanted to run to you. I almost did. But if I had, they would have killed everyone there. Silence swallowed the bunker. No one spoke, not even Nathan Cross. A violent explosion shook the cabin overhead. Dust poured from the ceiling. Concrete groaned. One of the monitors flickered back to life. The main entrance. Evelyn Shaw stood beside the fireplace. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't rushing. She simply watched workers attach shaped charges to the remaining support beams. Elizabeth glanced at the screen once. She hasn't changed. Emily wiped tears from her face. Who is she? Elizabeth answered without hesitation. The founder of Orion. Cross corrected her softly. The public founder. Elizabeth nodded. The woman everyone sees. There are others above her. Emily frowned. Above her? Elizabeth looked directly into her daughter's eyes. Orion isn't an organization. It's a network. It survives because no one member knows everyone else. Destroy one, another replaces them. The bunker computer suddenly chimed. A new message appeared. Primary archive verified. Final witness confirmed. Elizabeth read the screen. So it finally recognized me. Emily looked between the monitor and her mother. What does that mean? Elizabeth stepped toward the computer. It means CIPHER was never protecting evidence. She turned back. It was protecting witnesses. Emily frowned. What witnesses? Elizabeth reached into her jacket. She removed a small laminated identification card. Old, cracked with age. She placed it beside the titanium case. Emily read the name. Witness number 1, Elizabeth Carter. Then Elizabeth looked at her daughter. You were never searching for a conspiracy. She paused. You were searching for the only surviving witness who could prove it existed. Before Emily could respond, every monitor flashed bright red. A calm, computerized voice echoed through the bunker. Internal breach. Level 3. Unauthorized entry. The steel hatch behind Elizabeth slammed open. Heavy boots thundered down the tunnel. Someone had reached them. This time, there would be nowhere left to run. Witness number 1. The tunnel echoed with approaching footsteps. Fast. Disciplined. More than one person. Elizabeth looked toward the steel hatch only once, then calmly turned back to Emily. We don't have much time. Nathan Cross checked the magazine in his pistol. 7 rounds. He gave a dry smile. I was hoping retirement would be quieter. Emily looked between them. What do we do? Elizabeth didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pointed toward the titanium case. Open the storage drive. Emily frowned. I don't have a computer. You do. Elizabeth nodded toward the bunker terminals, the only one Orion never found. Emily hurried to the nearest workstation. The encrypted drive slid into an old USB port. Nothing happened. For 3 long seconds, the monitor remained black. Then, Project CIPHER final authorization enter witness key. Elizabeth stepped beside her. She placed her right thumb on a small glass sensor beneath the monitor. Access granted. The entire bunker came alive. Hidden servers began humming. Dust fell from ventilation shafts that hadn't moved in years. Dozens of monitors switched on simultaneously. A progress bar appeared. Global distribution preparing. Emily looked up. What is it doing? Elizabeth answered quietly. For 17 years. CIPHER has been waiting for me. Cross suddenly raised his pistol. They're through. The first armed operative emerged from the tunnel. Black tactical armor, night vision helmet, suppressed rifle. He saw Cross. Cross fired first. The confined bunker amplified the gunshot into a deafening explosion. The operative collapsed. 2 more immediately took his place. They weren't amateurs. One advanced. The other provided cover. Cross ducked behind a concrete pillar. Emily, how long? She looked at the monitor. 3 minutes. Cross laughed once. We don't have 3. The operatives opened fire. Concrete splintered, glass shattered. Ancient computer monitors exploded into sparks. Elizabeth grabbed Emily's shoulder. "No matter what happens, do not stop the upload." "What upload?" "The truth." Emily stared at the screen. "Global distribution. 8%. What exactly is being sent?" Elizabeth looked toward the flashing progress bar. "Everything. Every classified document, every financial record, every surveillance archive, every assassination order, every altered death certificate." Emily whispered. "To who?" Elizabeth smiled. "Everyone. Outside." Evelyn Shaw watched technicians working around the ruined cabin. A younger officer hurried toward her. "Ma'am, we've confirmed activity below." Shaw nodded. "Signal?" "Yes, data transmission has started. For the first time." The composed executive lost her calm. "Stop it. We're trying." "Trying isn't good enough." She looked toward the shattered cabin. "If that archive leaves this mountain, Orion dies tonight, inside the bunker." The upload reached 15%. Suddenly, every monitor displayed hundreds of destinations: major news organizations, federal courts, international investigative agencies, university archives, independent journalists, protected servers across multiple continents. Emily realized the truth. Cipher had never been built as a vault. It had been built as a dead man's switch. If the final witness authenticated herself, the archive would automatically release itself to the world. No government could stop it. No court order could erase it. No single server could contain it. The truth had already begun escaping. Nathan Cross fired twice more. Another operative fell. A bullet struck his shoulder. He staggered but remained standing. Elizabeth moved toward him. "No." Cross stopped her. "You stay with Emily. You've waited 17 years. I'm not wasting it now." He smiled faintly. "I finally know who the leak was." Elizabeth's expression changed. "What?" Cross looked toward the tunnel. It wasn't inside Cipher. It was inside Orion. Emily frowned. "What does that mean?" Cross answered between gunshots. "Evelyn was never the one giving orders, before anyone could respond." A sharp electronic tone interrupted the bunker. The computer displayed a new message. "Second authorization detected." Emily looked at Elizabeth. "I didn't touch anything." Elizabeth hadn't either. A second biometric signature was authenticating itself. Somewhere, outside the bunker, the screen identified it. "Witness number 2 verified." Emily stared at the monitor. There were 2 witnesses. Elizabeth's face slowly lost all color. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible." The computer continued. "Identity confirmed. Thomas Mercer. Status updated. Alive." Emily felt the room spin. Agent Mercer, the man officially declared dead 17 years ago. The man whose FBI badge had appeared at the cemetery. The man David Ross believed had failed. He was alive. And somehow, he had just activated Project Cipher from somewhere beyond Blackwater Lake. Witness number 2. The bunker fell silent. Even the gunfire seemed distant, every eye fixed on the monitor. "Witness number 2 verified. Thomas Mercer. Status alive." Emily looked at Elizabeth. "You told me you didn't know." Elizabeth slowly shook her head. "I didn't. I thought he died buying me enough time to disappear." Nathan Cross stared at the screen in disbelief. "I identified his body." "No," Elizabeth corrected softly. "You identified a body carrying his identification." Cross's expression collapsed. 17 years. Every report, every signature, every conclusion, built on one carefully constructed deception. The bunker speakers crackled. Static filled the room. Then, a familiar male voice emerged. Older, weathered, calm. "Elizabeth." She froze. Her lips parted without sound. "Tom," the voice continued, "if you're hearing this, then we both survived longer than either of us expected." Emily stared at the speakers. Agent Thomas Mercer. Alive. Not in person. A live transmission. Not a recording. "Cross." Mercer's voice shifted. Nathan stepped closer. "I'm here. You still talk too much." Cross laughed despite everything. "You sound terrible. I've earned it." A brief pause. Then Mercer's tone became serious. "They've found Blackwater. We know. They're sealing every road." "We know." "The archive?" Elizabeth answered. "It's transmitting." "Good." Another pause. Then Mercer spoke the words none of them expected. "Evelyn Shaw isn't Orion." Nathan closed his eyes. "I figured that out." Mercer replied, "You haven't. She thinks she runs Orion, but she only reports to it." Emily frowned. "Then who leads it?" Silence. 5 long seconds. "Finally," Mercer answered. "No one." The bunker speakers hissed. "What?" Emily whispered. Mercer's voice remained steady. "Orion stopped being an organization years ago. It became an idea. A system. Every generation recruits the next. No leader, no headquarters, no membership list. Only people protecting themselves." Elizabeth slowly sat down. "So we can never destroy it." "No," Mercer answered. "You can't. But you can make secrecy impossible." The upload reached 48%. Outside. Technicians shouted. Satellite jammers surrounded the cabin. Fiber lines were cut. Portable antennas unfolded. Evelyn Shaw watched every attempt fail. One technician turned toward her. "It isn't using satellites." "What?" "It isn't using cellular. It isn't using the internet." She frowned. "Then where is it sending the archive?" The technician swallowed. "We don't know. Inside the bunker." Cipher answered for him. "Archive distribution method. Multiple physical dead drops previously seeded." Emily stared. "What does that mean?" Elizabeth smiled for the first time in years. "It means we never trusted computers." Cross suddenly understood. The archive was copied. Elizabeth nodded. Thousands of times. Universities, law firms, newsrooms, private collections, safety deposit boxes, encrypted film, microdots, paper, magnetic tape. Emily realized what Project Cipher truly was. The upload wasn't creating evidence. It was releasing instructions telling thousands of hidden custodians to open evidence they had unknowingly protected for years. The truth had already existed. The world simply hadn't known where to look. Gunfire erupted again. Cross fired his last round. Click. Empty. He threw the pistol aside. 3 operatives advanced through the smoke. Elizabeth stepped in front of Emily. "No." Emily pulled her back. "We finish this together." The lead operative raised his rifle. Before he could fire, a deafening explosion echoed from the tunnel. The blast wave knocked everyone to the floor. Dust filled the bunker. Concrete cracked. When the smoke cleared, the tunnel entrance had completely collapsed. Someone had detonated explosives from the opposite side. Mercer's voice returned through the speakers. "I sealed the tunnel." Cross looked up. "You trapped yourself." "I know." Silence. Then Mercer laughed quietly. "I've been waiting 17 years to retire." The transmission ended. The speaker went dead. Emily understood. Thomas Mercer had just buried himself alive. To keep Orion out long enough for the archive to finish, the monitors displayed one final progress bar: 76%, 77%, 78%. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply watched. Outside. for the first time. Evelyn Shaw looked afraid. The release, the bunker trembled continuously. Dust drifted from widening cracks in the ceiling. The collapsed escape tunnel remained silent. Thomas Mercer's final act had bought them time. But not much. The progress bar continued climbing. 79%, 80%, 81%. Every second felt impossibly long. Emily couldn't take her eyes off the screen. "So this is it," Elizabeth nodded. "This is why they hunted us. For 17 years. Cross leaned against the concrete wall, pressing one hand against the wound in his shoulder. They never wanted the evidence. Emily looked at him. They wanted to stop the witnesses. Cross smiled weakly. Evidence can be destroyed. Witnesses remember, outside the bunker. Evelyn Shaw stood beside the ruined cabin. Another technician rushed toward her. His face had gone pale. "Ma'am," she didn't look at him. "Report. The first releases have started. No, they're live." He handed her a satellite tablet. The screen filled with headlines. Classified files released to International Press Federal Archives. Questioned multiple historical investigations reopen. Former agents identified. The technician refreshed the page. 10 new headlines appeared. Then 20. Then 50. Around the world. Editors opened sealed packages. Archivists unlocked forgotten vaults. Journalists received authentication codes that had remained dormant for decades. University librarians discovered anonymous collections hidden inside restricted archives. Court clerks opened envelopes marked "Open only if code cipher is broadcast." The truth wasn't traveling. It was awakening. Inside the bunker. The monitors switched rapidly between hundreds of broadcasts. News anchors interrupted scheduled programming. Emergency legal reviews began. Financial regulators froze offshore accounts connected to Orion shell companies. Retired judges requested immediate federal hearings. International prosecutors issued preservation orders before records could disappear. Emily watched history change in real time. Nobody had leaked one document. Cipher had forced the world to verify thousands of independent pieces simultaneously. No single government could dismiss it. No single official could deny it. The evidence confirmed itself, exactly as Elizabeth had designed. The progress bar reached 92%. Nathan Cross slowly laughed. "I finally understand." Emily looked at him. "Understand what?" Cross pointed toward the monitors. Orion believed power came from controlling information. He looked at Elizabeth. "You believed power came from distributing it." Elizabeth nodded. "If everyone owns the truth, no one can bury it." A new alert appeared. Global verification complete. Archive authenticity confirmed. Emily frowned. It already worked? Elizabeth smiled. It worked the moment independent evidence agreed with itself. The upload was never the important part. The confirmation was. Suddenly, every monitor changed again. One live camera focused on Evelyn Shaw outside the cabin. She remained perfectly still. Her phone rang. She answered. No one inside the bunker could hear the caller. But they watched her expression change. Confidence. Confusion. Then, disbelief. She slowly lowered the phone. The officers surrounding her looked uncertain. One by one, they stepped away. Not because they had received different orders, because there were no orders anymore. The people who had protected Orion were now protecting themselves. The network was breaking apart, exactly as Mercer had predicted. No leader, no headquarters, only fear. And fear spread faster than loyalty. The bunker computer chimed one final time. 99%. Emily held her breath. 100%. The progress bar disappeared. The room fell silent. Every monitor turned black. Then one final message appeared in white letters. Project Cipher mission complete. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Emily. The words remained for several seconds. Then, one by one, every computer shut itself down forever. The bunker became silent. No humming servers, no glowing monitors, no alarms. Project CIPHER had completed the task for which it had been built. After 17 years, it no longer had a purpose. The last order. The bunker remained silent. Project CIPHER had completed its mission. Every server had shut down. Every archive had been released. Only the emergency lights still glowed faintly against the concrete walls. Emily looked toward the collapsed tunnel. No movement, no gunfire. Only settling dust. Then, the radio clipped to one of the fallen operatives suddenly crackled. Eagle Team. Silence. Eagle Team, respond. Nothing. A woman's voice finally came across the speaker. Stand down. Nathan Cross frowned. He recognized it immediately. Evelyn Shaw. Every surviving operative inside the bunker froze. One slowly reached for his radio. Director? Her answer came quietly. It's over. Outside. Blackwater had become surrounded by law enforcement vehicles. Not Orion. Real law enforcement. State police, federal investigators, emergency response teams. News helicopters circled overhead. The archive had spread too quickly. Too many judges. Too many prosecutors. Too many agencies. No one trusted anyone anymore. Every department had begun investigating every other department. Exactly as CIPHER intended. Inside the bunker. One surviving Orion operative lowered his rifle. Then another. Finally the last. None of them looked at Emily. None of them looked at Elizabeth. Instead, they looked toward Nathan Cross. Sir, one asked quietly, what are our orders? Cross stared at them for several long seconds, then removed the Orion identification badge from inside his jacket. He looked at the silver emblem, the symbol that had ruled nearly half his life. Without a word, he placed it on the concrete floor, then crushed it beneath his boot. There are no more orders. Silence. The other operatives slowly removed their own badges, one by one. No speeches, no dramatic declarations, only exhausted men realizing the organization they had served no longer existed. Outside the ruined cabin, Evelyn Shaw remained standing alone. Every vehicle around her had stopped moving. Phones rang constantly. No one answered. One of her senior officers approached. They've frozen every account. Another arrived. Our legal teams are resigning. A third spoke quietly. The board has disappeared. Evelyn almost smiled. There never was a board. She looked toward Blackwater Lake. 17 years. 17 years protecting a machine that had consumed everyone inside it. Her phone rang once more. Unknown number. She answered. No one spoke. Only a pre-recorded message. Project CIPHER. Mission complete. The call disconnected. For the first time in decades, Evelyn Shaw understood. She had not been defeated by Emily. She had not been defeated by Elizabeth. She had been defeated 17 years earlier. The moment Elizabeth created a system that no one person could ever control. Slowly, Evelyn removed the pistol from beneath her coat. The officers around her tensed. She looked at the weapon for several seconds, then quietly placed it on the hood of her SUV, raised both hands, and waited. Minutes later, federal agents walked toward her. This time, she did not resist. Back inside the bunker, Emily looked at her mother. So, it's finally over? Elizabeth remained silent. She walked slowly toward the old computer terminal, rested one hand against the cold monitor, then nodded. For Project CIPHER? Yes. Emily frowned. For Project CIPHER? Elizabeth smiled softly. There will always be another Orion. There will always be people who want to bury the truth. She looked directly at Emily. Our job was never to end that. It was only to make the next lie a little harder to tell. Emily finally understood. Project CIPHER had never promised a perfect world, only a more honest one. And sometimes, that was enough. Home, the sun was rising when they finally emerged from beneath the cabin. Blackwater Lake looked different in the morning light. Not because the landscape had changed, because the lies surrounding it had disappeared. Emergency vehicles lined the narrow road. Investigators photographed every inch of the property. Evidence teams carefully carried boxes from the bunker. Nobody rushed. Nobody argued. For the first time in 17 years, everything would be documented instead of erased. Emily stood quietly near the shoreline. She watched the lake where her childhood had ended. Elizabeth approached slowly. Neither woman spoke for several minutes. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "I don't know what to call you." Elizabeth smiled sadly. "You can call me whatever feels true." Emily looked down. "I stopped saying Mom a long time ago." Elizabeth nodded. "I know. I heard." Emily looked up. "What?" "I listened." Elizabeth's voice trembled. "There were people who kept me informed. Birthdays, graduation, the day you started working in forensic audio. I knew all of it." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You knew, but you never came." Elizabeth closed her eyes. "Every year, I almost did. And every year, I chose to keep you alive instead." Emily wanted to argue. She wanted to say the choice had never belonged to Elizabeth alone. Instead, she stepped forward and embraced her mother. Neither of them spoke. There were no words capable of repairing 17 stolen years. Some losses could never be recovered. Only accepted. Nathan Cross sat on the back of an ambulance while a medic wrapped his shoulder. A younger federal investigator approached him. "Mr. Cross," Nathan looked up. "We'll need a statement." Cross gave a tired smile. "I imagine you'll need several." The investigator hesitated. "You're under arrest." "I know." Cross stood without resistance. Before entering the vehicle, he looked once toward Emily. "I'm sorry." Emily nodded slowly. "I know." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was the beginning of something neither of them had expected. The truth. Weeks passed, then months. Congressional hearings began. Dozens of sealed investigations reopened. Judges overturned convictions built upon fabricated evidence. Families finally learned what had happened to people who had disappeared decades earlier. Some answers brought peace, others brought grief. But they were answers, and answers mattered. One autumn afternoon, Emily returned to Blackwater. The cabin was gone. The unstable structure had been carefully dismantled. Only the stone chimney remained. A small memorial stood beside it. Not for Elizabeth. Not for Project CIPHER. Just a simple bronze plaque. In memory of those who chose truth when silence was safer. Emily traced the engraved letters with her fingertips, then looked toward the lake. Elizabeth now lived quietly under her real name, no longer hiding, no longer running. She never returned to government work, neither did Emily. Some stories deserved to end, others deserved to be remembered. They chose remembrance. Emily reached into her coat pocket, the brass key 731. She turned it once in the sunlight, then took it out to the edge of the lake. For a long moment, she considered throwing it into the water. Instead, she smiled and placed it inside the memorial box beneath the plaque, not as a secret, but as a reminder. The greatest protection for the truth was never hiding it. It was making sure no one could ever hide it again. The end.